Good afternoon. I'm Mark Allen with Gabriel.io, and I'm here today with Chris D'Antuono. I think I still blew it. How you doing? The North American Fintech lead at Currencycloud. How you doing today, Chris?
Doing good today, Mark. How about yourself?
I'm good. And for the record, can you pronounce your last name again?
Sure, it's Chris D'Antuono for the
D'Antuono.
record.
I,
Yeah. As I mentioned, it's the apostrophe that usually
it does.
throws the hiccup.
I,
But
I
yeah,
had
pleasure
it.
to be on today.
I had it, and then it's a weekend almost.
It's a Friday afternoon. Get yourself a drink.
Yes, right after this. So to start with, can you share a brief background of yourself and your work experience and what made you so passionate about fintech?
Yeah, sure. So my career started about, I want to say about 10 years ago in New York City, and I worked for a software company called G-Tech. And G-Tech basically is the nuts and bolts behind the lottery, state lotteries.
Oh,
And so I was working there in their software department, and then one of our vendors was actually plugged into our software for payments, and so they were one of my clients at GTech, and really was innovative what they were doing, like changing the way the checkout experience was, creating wallets for people that wanted to play the lottery. They had more of like a stored value, a PayPal type of product, like you will, within that software, and I could see where they were going in the next 3 to 4 years. And so, was talking to them at one of our meetings and jumped over to that company. So that company is named Skrill, and now they're under PaySafe, and worked there for about three and a half years, working in the I guess the higher risk model, where it was online gaming, as I mentioned. They were online sports betting and things like that, and so I was working with those types of vendors, utilizing our wallet solution. And then as I really, was really interested in the payment schemes a little bit more, I was introduced by a company called Currencycloud, where I am now, who actually does the plumbing behind other fintechs or other payment companies. So it's kind of taking that step a bit deeper to help build payment products. And so I joined them about 3.5 years now, and helping lead the North American team, headquartered out of the UK. And but yeah, so that's how I got into payments. Why I enjoy it so much is it's constantly innovating. It's taking old archaic products and really spinning them out to make the consumers and businesses act more seamlessly. And at the end of the day, it's beneficial to everyone, and it keeps me on my feet and challenging. And yeah, happy to talk about a bit further.
sure. And I've had experience in both the banking industry and the insurance industry, and as you would probably agree, they are slow to adopt new technology.
They are, yeah, they are, and quite some time ago they were really going at the fintechs, as a battle, and now they're completely open to partnerships. And I know we'll talk into it about COVID and how that was really changed and accelerated the adoption. But yeah, it's old legacy systems that they really just need to change out, or else they're gonna be left in the dust. To be
And
honest.
and and can you tell us what Currency Cloud does, as long as we brought it up, and
Sure.
who
Yeah.
your target audience is and all those things?
Of course. Yep. So we are the infrastructure. We're an API technology as an infrastructure that helps power other fintechs and payment companies, banks, challenger banks, and then marketplaces as well, in cross-border payments. And so what we provide is foreign exchange, payment rails to send money out globally. And we do that all with our API technology, so we can embed into other applications. And then we also are regulated, so we also actually do move the money. So we're not just the
Hmm.
technology that powers all of that, but we actually take on the funds and move them. So some of our clients today, a few prominent names in the UK, is Revolut, which is a challenger neobank, Asimo as well. We also work with a payment service provider called Flutterwave, who sends out money to their providers as well. And so you can think of us as that boring company in the background that helps
Hmm.
power a lot of the fun, cool, hip fintechs that are out there today.
Interesting. So you're the plumbing, or the foundation, and then everyone else does the pretty stuff. Is that a good way to describe it?
We are, yep. And the way we like to say it, it's a B to B to X company, and that X can
Hmm.
be a consumer or business, but we're doing that B2B in the back end, and we just help our customer build on top so that they can provide, any experience that they want. And that's the beauty of having an API technology, is that we really give them those Lego blocks to be able to create whatever they'd like. And so it's really interesting being on the front lines of that on a daily basis to really see these entrepreneurs and these products come about, and we're at the forefront of bringing these new innovative products to market.
Very cool. So as a fintech leader, what has been the most significant barrier in your career?
Yeah, I think it's just the ever changing landscape of fintech, and it's moving so fast, and
Mhm.
so it's just constantly really understanding the ecosystem. All the different players that are involved in the space has really been challenging, and fun at the same time, to really understand that ecosystem. So like, w- just think about card technology and Visa and MasterCard and how that operates. They have their scheme essentially, and then they work with a bank to then issue out a card to either businesses or consumers. But it's really never the bank that's issuing the card. If you think like a Macy's credit
Mhm.
card or another one, so then they have to have a program manager,
Mhm.
who's like the Macy's program manager, and then there's another product called the processor that actually ties all three of those together. And so you think, just to get a card out, you're dealing with 4 or 5 different types of companies that are in the back end doing that 1 second swipe.
Mhm.
It's going through multiple different partners. So things like that, it's just about really understanding that ecosystem. And then there are new players to the game constantly. And so that keeps it always challenging, but fun at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, I live about 2 miles from Visa's headquarters, so I know people that work there. Actually, my ex-wife worked there, as did my brother. Um, Most people don't know Visa started as a conglomerate of 10 different banks. It just wanted to consolidate that processing into one unit to make it easier.
Yep, that's right. I think it was Bank of America, I
B
think.
of A was the first big one. Yeah.
Was the first one, right? Yep. And
Yeah.
it's essentially like a coalition, or it
Mhm.
was at the time. And really, the funny thing is, they don't even move money.
Right.
They're just a network,
Yeah.
and so they're just passing the data between all these banks, and that's how they operate. And it's pretty awesome that they started that so long ago, and the technology is
Right.
is, is really at the forefront today.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's still true, but they used to be the largest network in the world. I, I can't think of one that's bigger, but I know they were the largest in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I trust you on that one. I wouldn't doubt it. They are, but they are constantly getting pressured from Mastercard. That's for sure.
Yes,
They
they.
go hand in hand.
Mhm. So, how is the fintech industry in terms of ensuring diversity in gender, race, and all of those other things?
Yeah, so it's a really good question, and it hits it on the times that we're in today. I could speak about Currencycloud specifically and what
Sure.
we're doing,
Okay.
and then I can talk about the industry itself, of what I've noticed in the industry. So, um, one of the best things that we have at our company is we basically have a diversity and inclusion team, and that basically is split into about 4 or 5 different pillars, which covers multicultural, gender identity, multi-generational parenthood, and I think the other one's disability, which is awesome. So it really brings awareness to our company. We have open forum sessions, we have actions, we stay on top of um, I guess the different awarenesses that are happening. So it's an awesome benefit to our company that we're fully engaged into those. I would also say in the industry, what I've seen since I've been in it for about, I guess, 8 or 9 years now, is that there's a lot of focus on just really bringing diversity into the sector, into the fintech space. There's definitely coalitions in multiple different cities. So when I was in New York, I know they had a Women in Fintech, um, just an engagement group that a lot of our employees are part of, and they're open to bringing multiple different voices in, and understanding it. And um, also events. And so Money 2020 is one of the biggest events. Unfortunately, this year it's not going to happen, but it's actually this week coming up virtually, and they do a really good job of bringing different forums to place, for sure. So they definitely do, definitely specific areas of focus to really bring awareness and talk about challenges in the industry and outside of the industry. And it seems to be more of a welcoming place for all diversity and inclusion. So yeah, it's a great place to be. And traditionally working in the finance sector, I would assume to say, or I think it's safe to say that it probably wasn't the best industry to be in for diversity. But I think, having the technical spin on it is bringing a lot of diversity and inclusion into the banking and finance space, it's great to see.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it's kind of interesting. I would say 10 years ago, if someone were to use the word fintech, most people would not have heard of it. I would say within the last 5 years, it's become more commonplace. So it kind of, I think that kind of helps that it's really more of a new genre. Would you agree?
It is, and I think it's actually even moving now even further. Um, and I've had it's funny because we've had a debate about this over the last year, but I think it's actually moving now to tech fin,
Yeah,
because now it's going to be technology first, the finances in the back, and it's really moving that way because you're really going to start to see, as I mentioned earlier, to you, I think prior to we get on, is that banking is taking more of an infrastructure seat, and you're going to have the technology companies on top of all of them that are going to be, front facing to the end customer.
that is actually a really interesting way to look at it. I mean,
Hmm.
because I've been in the technology industry for years, and it drives everything. But you're right; it is starting to become the driving force behind other industries, not just fintech. But I mean, fintech or financial just seems like a natural fit for technology.
It does, and I think what the progression of what's happening now is really good. And I said it took a long way to get here, because you had a lot of pushbacks from the big banks, that they felt like they can do all of the services, and they had all the customers, and they had the strong arm. But
Mhm.
companies are coming in and starting to chip away.
Yeah,
You have Venmo, for example, that comes and does money transmission from friend to friend. It's social. There was no way the banks are going to create that, right?
right.
And so all they are is a technology company that sits on top of another bank. They're not a bank themselves, and so they're an application, and so that's why that tech fin really does make sense,
Yeah,
in the
it
way
does.
it's positioned.
And it's funny because I actually worked at, I don't know if you know, you probably heard of this bank, HSBC. I
Of
worked at
course.
them back in the 80s. And, banks were one of the first ones, and insurance were one of the first industries to really adopt technology. But back then it was COBOLs, IBM mainframes, and all that stuff. And they stayed that way for a lot of years. And I think, would you agree with me? What's happened really is technology has like, oh, they're doing it better now. So we got to get off the stick here.
You're exactly right. So they were probably the first to adapt and adopt the technology, or early on. The problem is they didn't adapt to the new technology that was
Right.
coming, or continuously try to enhance it. They were just sticking in. And banking's tough because they use core systems, and
Right.
there's so many pieces tied to those cores, so it's hard to innovate, or change. If you don't do it, if you don't adapt and transition and innovate over time,
Right.
because then it's just too big of a project to replace. And that's a lot of these banks are essentially stuck right now. They have to either just create their own new infrastructure, because it's going to be impossible to replace these legacy systems.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that's where we're at, I guess, as of today. And you bring up a good point. They are the ones that had the technology in the beginning, and now they're trying to catch up in the background.
Yeah. And I think actually what's happened is, a lot of the people that wrote those systems are now retiring. And, and kids coming out of college with computer science degrees, they don't want to go work at the banking industry. They want to go work on the new hot tech startup, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And the funny thing is, a couple of years ago, 5 years ago, you would say, I want to go into, the cool new tech job is going to be in finance, right?
Yeah,
But now it is.
it is.
You're having these awesome, new innovative technologies that are strapping into financial services, and they're kind of like really changing the landscape of how we operate on a daily basis, in all different industries, not even just finance. It's actually bringing finance applications into
Yeah.
non-traditional finance companies.
Yes. And so what do you think are the future trends in the fintech industry?
Yeah, there's quite a few. I would say the biggest one that I talk about a lot is embedded finance. Um, and so it's really plugging into just like typical brands that aren't necessarily finance companies that you can just seamlessly operate. And then that allows the end customer to be able to, basically, it's essentially the Uber model. So you get into Uber, you take the car, and then you get out, and you don't have to pull out your wallet. You don't have to do anything. Um, that's essentially what every company is striving to do, is just make it as seamless as possible for their customer, whether that's a business or a consumer. And it allows that payment, the boring stuff that no one wants to do, be as seamless as possible. And that's what embedded finance is. It's just allowing our companies like ourselves plug into all of these different types of products or companies that allows them to have access to financial services when they're not a financial company.
So would you call your Currencycloud the Uber of your industry?
We try to Uberize other companies. Yeah.
I
So
see.
it's the Uberization of payments is really what the term is. And that's in the fintech lingo. So that's not coming from me. But we like to say we can help Uberize your company, something like that. Because you think about it, people think the convenience of Uber, of, the car coming and all of that. But really the best thing about that experience is walking out and not having to worry about payment. It really is. And so we try to bring that to all companies, and even in the B2B space, which is always going to be a couple of years behind of adoption, but you can get there at some point with those large transactions and all of those processes that are involved in B2B payments.
Yep, it's cool. And it's funny when you talk about Uber. My mother's 91 years old and she has used Uber.
It's amazing. It
Right?
really is amazing. And it's really impressive, how they've scaled so much, and where they're going is just incredible too. Like I mentioned, they had a product called Uber Cash. They put it on ice for a bit because of COVID, but they were essentially opening up their own wallet or checking accounts for people. So it's going to be a brand, a lifestyle brand, rather than just a car, because you have the food now and the car. Who knows where they go next? Maybe planes, I think, is where they're going next, or helicopters.
Ooh, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
I would like, hey, I need to go to New York real quick.
Yeah, I'm here for my chopper. But funny enough, they are actually doing a service in New York to go from the city to JFK Airport. It's called Uber Chopper, and I think it's about $200. Don't quote me on that, but it was, I think, $200 for one person to take a ride, 8-minute ride from the city to JFK.
Well, I have actually made that trip from Manhattan to JFK, and I would have paid the $200 because that traffic is.
I would pay it every time. Yep, every time. It's a painful experience getting out of there.
Absolutely. So can you tell us, in your opinion, what impact COVID-19 has had on the fintech sector?
Yeah, it's a huge impact. So just think about there's quite a few areas that it's impacted. I think one of the most important ones is these PPP loans. And so traditional banks, were granted the ability to get out loans to small, medium businesses for the government, what they accepted. But they didn't have the technology to get to process the applications fast enough, or to actually distribute the loans. So they're actually going to be sending out checks, paper checks to these businesses. But think about how many they had to cut. The mail system isn't necessarily always reliable. And so what fintechs came in for that area immediately was they partnered up with banks they had the systems already in place to process applications within seconds, and then to distribute the funds via ACH, which means same day that those funds are in that account. There's a company that was at the forefront of this called Cabbage, who actually was just scooped up by American Express, probably because of the success they had doing this. And so you think about all the impact that could do for a small, medium business to get approved, paid same day. The banks just didn't have the resources or technology to be able to process those. And so that's one of the areas. And I think the other is just this contactless payment that now you're able to do. You don't have to necessarily, not that cash is dead, but I don't think it's so COVID friendly, right? So to be able to do contactless payment is really changed, that area. And then the overall acceleration of banks in general, and other companies that were essentially slow moving with other fintechs or open to opportunity. Now it's a necessity. Banks they're not really put up to be able to work remote. And so they're starting to partner with other, fintechs and accelerate that adoption and partnership opportunity out of necessity rather than a need. And so that's what's happened, I think, from my perspective. Well, in our company, we're seeing a lot of money movement
Mm.
go through, because we enhance digital payments. And so just that overall landscape of digital is really accelerated in the last 9 months.
Yeah, and it's funny. It comes back to that old COBOL thing. There's, a lot of banking systems written in COBOL
Yep.
30,
Yep.
40 years ago, and those people have retired, and the kids in college don't learn COBOL.
Yeah, and they have no idea how to help, like how to fix it or anything. And so the only option is to create a new system.
Yep.
And that's really it. And you have to start from scratch, and that's really difficult when you have all of that
Right.
data that needs to be transitioned,
And
and you're managing people's money. So you
yes,
don't want to mess that up.
and lots of money, and in a hurry. That was the other thing is, if someone gave you a year to build this system, yeah, okay, we can do it in a year, but yeah, you got a month,
Yep, exactly.
right?
Yep.
So, in your opinion, is there a knowledge or skill gap in the fintech industry which is posing any issues?
Um, I think, to go back to our point earlier, there's a lot to say about technology, uh, I guess, experts or positions in the technical field that are coming into the finance world. And so, like, at the end of the day, financial services is always backed by some sort of regulation. And
Mm,
so I think there is a gap in some areas where some of these segments, whether it's investing or stock trading or things like that, um, where you want to build these products, but you have to do it along the lines of regulation.
mm,
And so you have to really understand regulation before you can even start to build your idea or product. So I think there could be a lot more done by our U.S. regulation, whether that's the FDIC, managing deposits, or it's the SEC managing brokerage. It would be great if there's some sort of service or coalition that can bridge that gap between the regulators and the innovators that want to build on against those regulations. And so the UK does this really well. They have and Europe itself, and they have I forget the name of it, but they have groups that meet on a frequent basis so they can understand, I guess, a sandbox environment, like a live sandbox environment, where they can go in and talk about where they're going with regulation, what to build to it. So I'd say that's definitely a gap
mm,
in here in the US, that we just don't they don't really know what we're trying to do.
mm.
And so it's like a black or white situation, where I think there could be a lot more innovation done if there was a an open narrative and open transparency between the two.
Very interesting. So I'm gonna qualify this next question by saying I think you are the next generation interested in fintech. I know you're around my kids' age, so what advice would you give to the next generation who are interested in fintech?
I mean, I could definitely talk about it. So, again, it would go back to this embedded finance, and it's really about thinking about what the next wave really is. And so, there's obviously a lot of talk about cryptocurrency recently, and what that can do and benefit. But I think it just comes down to to think about that the banks are essentially going to the background, a lot of them, which means that what is banking and what is embedded finance mean? It's all about the brand. And so you think about, like I mentioned, I think to you before the call, Google now is going to be having checking accounts,
Hmm.
and they're just using another bank in the background to power that. PayPal is a regulated service, but they use banks in the background to power that. And so we've already been traditionally used to it. I think the next wave is going to be really brands that you would never think of that would have checking accounts, money service business, ability to invest in other companies. It's really the way it's going. So I think, coming into this sector is to think about, to really take your hat off and not really focus in on the finance side, and think about bigger brands that can have access to all of these services through API technology. Any company can get access to financial services now, and use that and sell it to their customer. So
Yeah,
I think there's a really benefit to that.
it's interesting you say that because I can't remember the last time I stepped foot in my bank.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's because they had no benefit to go there, right?
Right.
And so I think Capital One is doing this now. They have it's a coffee shop,
Yes.
and their bankers are there, and that's a great way to think about it, right? So no one's really going there for something they want to do. It's because they have to do it, right? And so you can do that all through technology now. And it's much faster. It's like, they're getting really good with these AI customer service products where you can actually talk to your bank, pretty frequently, get advice and things like that with AI. And I think that's definitely been a lot of investing with banks in that area for customer service and save on costs. But yeah, it's a painful experience for sure. And I think, like I said, where brands make their value is that customer engagement, and they're really good at doing that, like an Uber, to make it seamless. And so why wouldn't they embed financial services as well? And they'll win over customers that way, rather than going to Bank of America, or they just don't provide much value to you anymore, because you can do your services somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I want to thank you for your time today. I know it's pretty close to the weekend there down in LA, so I'm gonna let you start your weekend and have a good time. But thanks again. And this is really a fascinating subject. And you're right. I mean, I personally believe fintech is about to explode. I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg. Would you agree?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think it's been, and it hasn't been, it's not like a shock, right? It's been a slow rise.
Right.
But I think now, through this acceleration and adoption, I think the banks are buying in. I think you're right. I mean, I think it's about to really hit it on the head. And happy to be on here. Thanks for having me. I think, like I said, I'm always happy to talk about it, no matter what time or day. But appreciate it, Mark. It's a good conversation.
Yeah. Thanks. And well, I don't know about you. I'm gonna pop open a cold beer now. I hope you can do the same and enjoy your weekend.
I may have already started.
Oh, really? You're one ahead of me.
Cheers, Mark.
All right. Bye.
See ya.